What's going on? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Puritikacharya Satartha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Puritikacharya Astotartha Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavanda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. You're not new.
I'm new.
Completely new? Okay. Just get that Prakash and get it taken back. Yeah, we don't need him. Usually the completely new people don't bow down like that. But you're welcome to bow down. That's why I thought you were new. But it's good. That's good. Okay, does anyone remember exactly where we are? Because I lost the place. I think we're in 36. Text 36. Let's go with that. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On the 16th day of November 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 3 entitled Karma Yoga, and we're in text number 36 on page 172. Prakash, give me a book. Do you have it? Probably not. Give me a book. 170, page 172. You have it? Okay, great. All right, here we go. Arjuna Vacha Atakena Prayukto Yam Papang Charadi Purushaha Anichannapi Varshneya Balad even Yojitaha. Arjuna Vacha Atakena Prayukto Yam Papang Charati Purushaha Anichannapi Varshneya Balad even Yojitaha. Okay, in the interest of trying to make up some of the lost time, I'll just go to the synonyms. I'll read them myself. Arjuna Vacha, Arjun said, Ata then, Kena, by what? Prayuktaha, impelled, ayam one papam sins, chadati does purushaha, a man anichan without desiring, api although Varshneya, O descendant of Vrishni, balat by force, eva as if niyojitaha, engaged. Translation. Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled but to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Purport. A living entity as part and parcel of the Supreme is originally spiritual, pure, and free from all material contaminations. Therefore, by nature, he is not subject to the sins of the material world. But when he is in contact with the material nature, he acts in many sinful ways without hesitation, and sometimes even against his will. As such, Arjuna's question to Krishna is very sanguine, that means pertinent, as to the perverted nature of the living entities. Although the living entity sometimes does not want to act in sin, he is still forced to act. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the supersoul within, but are due to another cause, as the Lord explains in the next verse. Okay, we're going to go on to the next verse. Text 37. Shri Bhagavana Vacha Kama Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudbhavaha Mahashano Mahapapma Vidyenam Yavairinam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Purport. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion. Or in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust, as milk in contact with sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath, or extreme anger, is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If, therefore, the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by the prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities, and when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. This inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutras, wherein it is said, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, one should inquire into the Supreme. And the Supreme is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as Janma Jasya Yaton Vayadi Taratascha, or the origin of everything is the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also in the Supreme. If, therefore, lust is transformed into love for the Supreme, or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravana. But by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshur Unmiratam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So first I'd like to apologize. We had a meeting very important Istagosi, and it lasted longer than intended. That's why we're late. So in these 2 verses, we enter into this latter portion of the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And I always found these verses and their purports to be very illuminating and very pertinent to our own condition. So this whole chapter is about Karma Yoga, that's the title of it, and that means that it's about how we act in this world. And the idea behind the Karma Yoga is that if we link ourselves, yoga means to link, if we link ourselves to the Supreme Lord through our activity, then we eliminate or we eradicate previous karma that is causing us to take repeated births in this world. And so Karma Yoga has the aspect of sacrifice in it. When instead of you working hard, but instead of trying to enjoy all of the fruits of your labor, if you give a portion of it for the worship of the Lord, or for the upkeep of the temple or whatever, then that activity that you engaged in to earn that money becomes sacrifice. And in doing that, you're loosening the bonds that are keeping you bound up to birth and death. And those bonds are in the form of previous karma and their reactions. Some of them may be what we call good karma. If you perform pious activity of kindness, charity, sacrifice for others, then you'll come back, you'll get born again, and you'll reap the rewards of that, even to the point of going to heaven, heavenly planets, and enjoying. But all of that, even though it's called good karma, it still keeps you bound in this material world. Because in order to get those good reactions, you have to take another material body. You're not going to the spiritual world for an eternal life, you see. So we're concerned as devotees who understand the basic philosophy of Krishna consciousness that we should want to get out of the bonds of birth and death, birth, old age, disease, and death. Krishna says in the 13th chapter, this is part of real knowledge, that janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha dosha anudarshanam. To understand the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death, and that we've been on this scale going around and around like a Ferris wheel, up and down, different species, different planets, but always experiencing those 4 limitations since time immemorial. And the mission of human life is to end that cycle. That's one of the preliminary missions, part of it, so that's what this is all about. And Arjuna is saying, so Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to act according to his duty, to perform his duty in the varnashram system. Varnashram means a series of varnas and ashrams. Varna for different social categories, such as the Brahmins, who are intellectuals, the teachers, the spiritual leaders of society, the Kshatriyas, who are the managers, leaders, and military. And then you have the Vaishyas, who are the bankers and the farmers, especially those who create wealth. And then you have manual laborers, largely as Shudras. But they're all part of the Vedic culture, and they carefully follow certain rules and regulations to avoid what Prabhupada would call the sin here. Sin is activities against the laws of nature, against the laws of God, simply with reference to how can I enjoy in this world. In other words, it's dictated by this kama. Now, kama is commonly understood to be, as defined here, lust, with sexual desire. But it's more than that. It's all a panoply of selfish desires that we have to enjoy our senses in various ways. We have the eyes, the ears, those. We have the mental, internal sense, which is often how we try to enjoy. And all, as Krishna will explain, they become infected with material desire. I always like to use the analogy of, or the example rather, of drugs, of how one, or alcohol, or anything you become addicted to, some substance abuse, Well, what does that mean? It means that you've taken those to such a degree with the hope to enjoy, and hope to get some benefit, but now you're hooked. You're an addict, even though you know it's bad for you, just like Arjuna says, anichan, almost unwillingly now you have to take it. Your desire is to quit, but you don't have the willpower, the strength, because you're under the grip. I grew up in the New York area, in the 50s, the 60s, and 70s, And that was the center of heroin addiction for many, many years in America. And they have the lingo. I never took that, thank God. I never got entangled in that. But, you have the monkey on your back. You know that, do you have an analogy? You ever hear that? A monkey on your back, which is kind of, you got to have it. I got to have it, get it. So that's exactly what Arjuna is talking about. Balad, even as if by force, you're engaging in this activity which is self-destructive on one level, your intellect, but it's just too powerful for you. But that's an extreme example. In a very important way, material life itself constitutes that. We become attracted to a certain way of being with a certain set of sense objects and people and relationships, and we need that. But one way or another, it's going to end. Either it's going to be taken away by time, or it's going to be broken off, and it's going to be so painful. So the very things that we enjoy in this world are actually our worst enemy. Krishna says in the 5th chapter, he's going to say, and I always love this verse, Yehi sangsparshita bhoga dukkha yone evate, that the pleasures you enjoy from the contact of the senses of sense objects, and that's what kama is all about, are the very source of your pain, of your misery. Even if it's very wholesome, called mode of goodnessy, as is described in the 14th chapter, the different modes. Prabhupada is talking about, that you don't want to get into a mode of ignorance and anger where you lose your intelligence. Remember the previous chapter where Krishna has talked about dhyayadovashiyan pungsa. When you meditate on the objects of the senses, then you get attached, and that from that sangha chandaje kama, then the kama comes, the strong attachment, I have to engage in it. And from that kama comes krodha, wrath. So it's a degradation, you see, down to the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance. And anger, sometimes you do something, oh, why did I do that? I told the story of my epic fight with my brother when I was about 8 years old. I mean, he was just about to come and wring my neck because I had destroyed a couple of his baseball trophies that he'd won, and a couple other things. He'd kicked apart one of my little projects, that I had built. And but I was only 8. He was like 13. He was much bigger than me. And I was screaming and yelling. My poor mother was at the kitchen table. She didn't know what to do because we were too big. Luckily, my father came in just at that time, stopped him from coming at me. I don't know what he would have done. But I mean, Prabhupada tells the story. Sometimes a brother, he knew in his experience, killed his own brother. Who knows why? Maybe over a woman or whatever. And so one brother is dead. The other brother is arrested for murder, and he's going to be put to death. And the poor father says, "Oh, I've already lost one son." And he begged to the judge at least give him life in prison, so he commuted his sentence. But the whole thing is, and you do things, you become crazy. From anger, you can completely, and that's what explained in there. So it all begins with this absorption of the mind in the object of the senses. Dhyayato. There's a word, meditation is famous in yoga. The word is dhyayan, and dhyayati, to meditate on. The dhyana yoga is described in the 6th chapter. So if you're meditating on Krishna, you're being purified and elevated. But normally, without that instruction or discipline, you meditate on the objects of the senses. So that's what's being described. And here, what does Krishna say? It's born of the mode of passion, and it's mahashno mahapapma. It means all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. Is that everybody is infected with this, not just human beings, but all the species of life. Is that, something to eat, and where's my mate, on a very rudimentary level. Or is it so many varieties in human life, but it's all based on this idea, I want to enjoy, or my clan wants to enjoy, my family wants to enjoy, and it's this is the real enemy in this world. So then Prabhupada talks about how that the love for Krishna becomes transformed into lust. So we have this prema and kama. So they're related. It's a distortion. It's what Prabhupada called the perverted reflection. So kama is self-centered. In the 4th chapter of Adi Lila of this Chaitanya Charitamrita, this is another one of our books, very important book learn about. Krishna's Kaviraj, he gives a wonderful definition of the kama and prema. He says, Atmendriya Priti Vancha Tare Bali Kam. Krishnendriya Priti Itcha Dare Prem Nam. The desire to satisfy one's own senses is called kama, and we can see it leads to degradation. But the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is prema. You see? So that's what bhakti is all about. Is to sublimate. This word sublimate is such a wonderful word. To make sublime, or to sanctify the very desires that we have. Just like we have to eat, right? There's so many, billion. How many billions of dollars is spent on, producing food that people want to buy and eat because it tastes good, like that. So it's a whole vast industry. But it's just another addiction on the material side. But there is a way of eating spiritually, as we know, by making it a sacrifice. In this chapter we had this verse, Yagya Shishtashin Aksanto Muchante Sarva Kilbishai. Yagya means sacrifice. Shishta means remnants. Santa means the saints, like SanDiego, same word. The devotees, the saints, they eat food that has been offered for sacrifice. In other words, this whole idea of prasadam, I'm trying to, there's a lot of new words, but devotees, of course, eat. But what do we eat? Of course, vegetarian food, but it's prepared with love and devotion and offered to Krishna, for his pleasure. Because after all, he gave us all the ingredients, he gave us everything. And he even gave us the intelligence to understand the recipes and the hands to actually make. So everything is coming from him anyway. So we offer it back with love and devotion. And then Krishna, he sees the love and devotion, he accepts it. In the 9th chapter he says, if it's offered with love and devotion, then I eat it. He doesn't consume it usually. Sometimes he does. This wonderful pastime. But just by looking at it, he can see and he eats it that way. And then those remnants become spiritually potent. And if you partake of those, you become purified. Muchante savakil, freed from sinful reactions. So that's, eating can be done spiritually. Sex also can be done spiritually. There's within marriage, for the sake of raising, Krishna conscious children, after a certain sacrifice. That also, Krishna says, Dharma varuddha buddhashi kamosmi bharatarshava. Here's the word kama. That the lust that is not, and sex that is not contrary to religious principles, I am that. Dharma varuddha buddhishis kamosmi. So all of these activities, and Prabhupada ends this purport by saying even the anger Arjuna used in fighting Hanuman, the great servitor of Ram, became furious at Ravana, for kidnapping Sita. He burned the whole city. But this is devotion. This is a pure devotee. He's a great devotee. We all honor him. So these can be used in Krishna's service, but they have to be done with the proper guidance. So Krishna will now analyze how kama takes over, our senses, and how we can, through buddhi yoga, through bhakti yoga, we can purify the lust back into prema. It's the whole process of bhakti is centered on that. Everything we do. So that's a very important section here. Okay, so let us proceed. Now I want to leave a little time. This happens to be the disappearance day of Vasudev Ghosh, who's one of the main singers in Lord Chaitanya's kirtan pastimes. And so I'm going to read a little bit about him. So I'm going to leave some time at the end here. We started late. All right, we'll continue with text 38. The different degrees in which lust covers. There's different degrees. Dume navre te vantnir. Yatadarsho malena cha. Yatolbe navrato garbas. Tatate nidamavritam. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. Purport. There are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity by which his pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestations, like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, and the womb about the embryo. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of the living spark can be a little perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary where there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to a cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. The embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, and the smoke-covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of a human being, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness, and if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke and the fire can be made to blaze. The fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy, lust, by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. So, like so many things in this world, there are different degrees. And the human form of life is a chance for us to make progress in the process of transmuting or sublimating the lust back into love of Godhead. The lower forms of life, there's no opportunity. You know, some dog may wander in here, but he can't understand the Bhagavad Gita. Can't make any progress. Although he's a fortunate dog, I mean, just here. But human beings, if they're intelligent, they try to imbibe this knowledge because the mission is the mission of human life. The mission of human life is to escape this dream world, really, in which our material desires are pulling us this way, that way, and then we die, and then we have a whole other chapter, and we forget everything. You know, what was that? I studied many of the Macbeth, was it? What is this human life? We strut and fret our time upon the stage. Is a tale told by an idiot signifying nothing? Isn't it? That's Shakespeare. I should look that one up. That's really, right out of the Bhagavad Gita, practically. It doesn't mean anything. We place meaning on it. But what's the meaning of working very hard to get some position or get some skill in life, and then you get a position and you have some money and you establish relationship and you have some name and fame or some, but it's all destroyed as soon as your death comes. Mrityu sarvaharashchaham, Krishna says, as death I take everything away, and then next life you start anew. Don't remember anything. If you're lucky, you're a human being, but whole different family. Different country, All right, let's be successful, And you got all these ambitions, but ultimately it doesn't get you any closer to the. As soon as you understand the philosophy, the first lesson, Najayate mriyate vakadachan nayam bhutva bhavitavanabuya. For the soul, the self, the actual person, there's no birth, there's no death. We're unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. We're not slain, we don't die when the body dies. Now we can't see the soul, we can't measure it, but that's the essential element of this body. That's who we really are. And understanding that, Krishna gives a wonderful verse at the beginning of this teaching there, practically 2:13. Dehi nosmanyata dehe. As the living entity passes from childhood to youth, to adolescent, to middle age, old age, similarly go into another body at death. One who is sober-minded, he's not freaked out by such a change. In other words, he sees a friend die and so forth. Oh, he's just gone on to another situation. And I remember when my father died, 87, and I visited my mother. We had a funeral and everything, and I was telling her these simple verses from the Bhagavad Gita, and it was such a she was open to that, because suddenly a long-time companion, my father, had died. They had good marriage, no, real disruption, and but I said yes. He's gone on to another place. He's still, and I explained to her how because I was a devotee of some kind, that is very auspicious for anyone in your family. It's just the way it works, because they have a connection to you, and you're thinking of Krishna. He was always asking me, when am I coming out of the movement? When am I going to get back to my education? But still, he was thinking about it. Yeah, my son, he's a Hare Krishna. Hey, he just sang Hare Krishna. And my mother, I got her to chant japa. About a week before she left her body. I have a recording of it. Anyway, so there's different degrees of this covering, and human life is the less covering, and we can proceed as this mirror, dust on the mirror. This is the beginning of the Lord Chaitanya's teaching about the holy name. What does he say? Cheto Dharpana Marjanam. This congregational chanting of the holy name of Krishna is the process of the age, the most efficacious process of yoga in this age. And what's the first benefit? It cleans the mirror of the mind. Right? Cheto Dharpana Marjanam. Marjana means to polish, and Dharpana means mirror. And Chaita is consciousness. So what does that mean? It means that for all this time we can't even see who we really are, because the dust of the mirror of the mind is preventing us from seeing our spiritual reality. But when that begins to be polished, we can understand ourselves as spiritual beings, and that alone is just the one step away from being liberated. Bhava Mahada Vagni Nirvapanam. It's a very graphic scene, verse. Cheto Dharpana Marjanam Bhava Mahada Vagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kaidava Chandrika Vatadanam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamita Swadanam Sarvatmasnaparam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. This is Lord Chaitanya's description of the benefits of congregational chanting. How does that poem start? Glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames. It's samsara's birth and death. It extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. The chanting is the waxy moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world of transcendental knowledge, which will take us to life's goal. The chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. So there's no exaggeration there. This is Krishna himself in the form of Lord Chaitanya, describing the chanting of his own holy names. And this movement is founded on that. And Lord Chaitanya, showed it by his own activities how powerful the chanting is. And so that transmutes the kama back into prema. That practice and the others that are surrounding it, all the other practices of bhakti, but central to the holy name. So we should want to become clean. The whole thing is a cleansing process. It's because of the dust of lust that has been blocking our vision of ourselves and God for millions of births, that we're in this tangle. We chose it ourselves. We turned our back. We didn't want to participate in, service to Krishna. We wanted to be Krishna. We wanted to be God and controllers and owners and enjoyers of this world. But we can't. It's not our nature. It's not our constitutional position. We are by nature Krishna's servants, and we can be happy in that relationship. We can't be happy trying to be masters of this world. We can see this historically who actually came out alive in the struggle. All the big leaders and the masters, they all died, and the little people and the controllers. We're thinking, we walk down the street and we say, boy, thank God I'm not part of that homeless group that's just sitting there. But that's a very small little step before you take that. We're all kind of exiles in this world. We're wandering, and it's not our home. We can't find our home here. There's no permanent home. People worried oh my God, I hope I don't get evicted. Can I make the rent? Okay, I gotta. But eventually we all get evicted. We're renting this. This body is our real home, and eventually the body stays. We go. We got to get out. So a devotee who's perfected Krishna consciousness is ready to go, knowing they're not coming back. And we just had this experience. This wonderful devotee in this community, Shamali, who she got a notice. She had cancer. She was only 36 or 38, I think 38, and she took it very maturely. And she had all her friends around, and Shakti was there, and mother, and Yamuna spent so much time. Of course, a wonderful husband, Bhishma Dev Prabhu, who started his Krishna consciousness here, And her spiritual master was calling her from Vrindavan and spending an hour on the phone, just preaching to her. And she was peaceful, completely peaceful when the end came. And Yamuna described it as just like she was taken out of the body. One of us who was able to, become very advanced. So it's possible. And this wonderful science Krishna is describing here, the different degrees of covering, and the human form is the least covered, and we should take advantage of it to become more and more aware of our actual nature and revive our original love for God, for Krishna. All right, I'm going to read one more, and then I think we'll read a little bit about Vasudev Ghosh. Okay, covering. Avatam means covering. Avatam jnanam etena jnanino nityavaidina kamarupena kaunteya dushpadena analena cha. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. Purport. It is said in the Manusmriti that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, and thus this material world is called Maitunya Agara, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. Therefore, this lust is the symbol of ignorance by which the living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually, that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. That is a revolutionary statement. Just think about it. Then where am I going to find happiness? That's the question. Now it says that this kind of happiness that I've been enjoying all the time, with gross and subtle sense gratification, is my enemy and is getting me deeper and deeper into entanglement and leading to great suffering. Then how can I be happy? And the answer is, chant the holy name. The answer is bhakti. Because that reservoir of pleasure, we have this famous pamphlet, reservoir of pleasure, is Krishna. He's within each of us. Every one of us has that eternal relation with Krishna. And because he's God, he can have that intimate personal relationship with unlimited numbers. It's not that, who am I? I'm just an insignificant soul. He has so many. No, he's ready to be very, very, reciprocate with you, depending on, seeing our sincerity and our purification. So the process of devotional service, I wouldn't say extinguishes the lust, but again, sublimates it. The desire we have a desire to see beautiful things, to smell beautiful fragrances, to sing and dance and celebrate and hear wonderful music. That's all there in Krishna consciousness, in relation to Krishna. I pointed out there's this thing called Taurya Trikena. There's three elements which we're all familiar with: singing, dancing, and playing musical instruments. Every Friday and Saturday night, of course, now we got the COVID on the wraps. People are suffering so much they can't go to their dances and the clubs and the bars and everything. I don't care about COVID. I just got to have That's what has happened. They needed someone. But it's all built around singing and dancing and playing musical instruments and, of course, getting intoxicated. So those same elements, when you see what a kirtan is, have you ever been in a kirtan, Hare Krishna? No? Okay. You really are new. There's drums, as you can see, and we have brass instruments. And we sing and we dance. We're going to have a little sample at 15. And, singing the name of the Lord. And that singing and dancing and playing musical instruments, when it's done, for Krishna, is a natural sense of joy there. And it's not just coming from the dancing and that's kind of just supporting the holy name. It's helping us to be more absorbed. And that happiness has unlimited. When we read some of our books and we see how the great devotees in the past, far past and near past, really enjoyed in Krishna consciousness with practically nothing. We have these 6 Goswamis. What did they have? These examples, these devotees, they went to India, went to Vrindavan in India, which is a holy site. And some of them had been very wealthy. They were right and left hand to the king. Another one would be today a billionaire, Raghunath Das Goswami. But once they got attracted by Lord Chaitanya, they went to Vrindavan. They became so austere. They didn't have a home, but it would be foolish to call them homeless, because the homeless has a bad connotation. But they wandered around. They lived under trees. They wore the simplest clothes, little loincloths and things, They ate practically nothing. But they wrote tremendously. Wonderful literature. I'll share with you one verse I rediscovered after many years. I was rereading this Chaitanya Charitamrita, so I came to the beginning of the Antya Leela, which Antya means the end, pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. And there's a whole chapter there where there's many excerpts or quoted verses from the 2 plays that Rupa Goswami wrote. And so one of them I was sharing with Rajendrananda Prabhu. Krishna is praising Srimati Radharani. This is the pinnacle of love. This is real love, completely selfless and pure. So he's saying it's all about the beauty of Srimati Radharani's face. He says, Vidureti vidavarupatam shatapatram batashavari mukhe itikena sadashriyo jalam tulanama natimatpriyananam. So matpriyananam means the face of my beloved. Priya is beloved. So he says, Vidureti about the moon, the full moon of the Sharat season we just had recently. It's very beautiful, and so, but that moon is beautiful at night, but in the daytime it fades away. And as far as the lotus goes, there's like 1,000-petal lotus, beautiful lotus in a lake or a river. It's very beautiful in the day with the sun shining, but at night it closes up. But the face of my beloved Radharani is beautiful both day and night. Therefore, to what can her face be compared? In other words, she outshines both of them. So it's just some simple, but the beauty of the expression and the purity of the whole thing. So the literature is filled with that. The Srimad Bhagavatam, such beautiful verses and such knowledge coming out. So that really satisfies the soul in a way that sense gratification can't. And the proof is that you never get stale, Is that sense gratification, you're anticipating it, you work hard to get it, you get it, you're experiencing it, I'm going to bliss, but then it's gone, it passes away, it's temporary. Krishna says in this same verse, Adyantabanta konteya nateshu ramate buddha, that this sense gratification is the source of your misery, and the wise don't take their pleasure there, it has a beginning and an end, so the wise don't. So how do they enjoy? Brahma saukyam. By contacting the Supreme Brahman through devotional service and engaging in that wonderful, blissful exchange with Krishna. And it continues all your life. Age is no matter. Srila Prabhupada was almost 80 years old and he was blissful as ever. And after death, it continues. Whereas after death, your sense gratification is gone and then you have to really get the results of your sinful activities. It's not happening. So we'll continue with this tomorrow, but I want to spend a little time with Vasudev Ghosh. So, who was Vasudev Ghosh? I think we mentioned this morning that he was one of the singers in Lord Chaitanya's entourage. And as soon as he started singing, Lord Chaitanya would immediately go into ecstasy. He and his two brothers, Vasudev Ghosh, Madhava Ghosh, and Govinda Ghosh, I think. Okay, so I marked this. Let's see if I got it. Okay, Sri Vasudev Ghosh. Vasudev Ghosh and his two brothers, Madhava Ghosh and Govinda, are eternal associates of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Fixed in Madhurya Ras, conjugal Ras with Radha and Krishna, they accepted Sri Radhika as their ultimate shelter. The brothers expertly performed sweet melodious kirtans. Whenever they sang, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda would immediately dance in ecstasy. Every year they came for Rath Yatra at Jagannath Puri. They led the chanting in one of the 7 kirtan groups arranged by Lord Chaitanya. Vasudev Ghosh used his music and song to preach in Bengal. He wrote many Bengali songs about Lord Gauranga, which are still sung by devotees. In one he says, "If Lord Gaur had not appeared in this age of Kali, then how could we tolerate living? He has given the very essence, the very charm of life, divine love, without which it is impossible to live in this world. Without Lord Chaitanya, how could we ever know that Srimati Radharani reigns supreme in the kingdom of divine love? Having received all these things from Lord Gaur Hari, now we think life is worth living." In another bhajan, Vasudev Ghosh says, "In your former Leela as Lord Ramchandra, you became famous for constructing a floating bridge of stones across the sea to Sri Lanka. Now in this Kali Yuga, you have given us the bridge of Harinam Sankirtan, by which even the lame and blind can cross the sea of birth and death and attain the supreme spiritual happiness." He is Gunatunga Saki in Radha Madhava's Nitya Nikunja Bhaja Leela. Wonderful soul, because I forgot this morning, I gave class this morning to mention him. Are there any discussions on these points? Otherwise I can share a few more poems with you. Hare Krishna. Okay, so I just remembered one that I hadn't chanted for a while, about the holy name. It says, Jiya nama morare prema modandasya nabhyamadavindam bhavadihadabasopi svachadalam mukti muktaya. Oh, glories to the holy name of Krishna, Mura's foe, that name's a blooming lotus, with ambrosia overflowing, the soothing balm of love of God to cure all pain and woe. Just a dim reflection of that name in slightly glowing is like a drop of purest rain that falls within an oyster shell and brings about the pearl of liberation from this earthly hell. Or how about this one? The prayer to have Krishna's wonderful lotus face manifest in one's heart eternally. The lake of the heart. Smita ducha makadanda syandi vaktrada vindam tapapada hangsan vishtagandham mukunda vidachata pashupali netra saranga rangam mamadidiyata dage sangamangi karotu. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus which does ere their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in that lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. Hare Krishna. And finally, one which I don't have a poem for, but I'll explain it. This is also a prayer from Bilvamangal Thakur in his Krishna Karnamrita, that the flood of bliss emanating from Krishna's lotus face will drown him, drown his mind. Madhurya Vadani Madammu Taranga Bhangi Shringara Sankritita Shita Kishora Vesham Amandahasa Laditanana Chandra Bimbam Ananda Samblava Manu Blavadham Manome. So he says, first of all, Madhurya Vadani Madammu Taranga Bhangi, that Madhurya Bhangi Shringara Sankritita Kishora Vesham, that this Kishora Vesha, this adolescent form of Krishna, is like an ocean of sweetness, in which these waves of the conjugal attraction, are breaking. It says, this face of the Lord, this lotus face, which is decorated with this mild smile, Amandahasa Laditanana Chandrabimbam, very delightful moon-like face. May the flood of bliss emanating from that face, drown my consciousness. Let it flow into my consciousness through my eyes. So this is our legacy, and those expressions and those experiences will fully satisfy the soul. Well, glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you for your attention. And now we'll have a little artik. Not too loud.